Hey, hi, hello, welcome to my channel. I am so thankful to have you here. Today we are talking about Kelley Elizabeth Cannon. Kelley Elizabeth Cannon led a charmed life. She was a Southern girl and she grew up pampered. Kelley's father was a well-known plastic surgeon who practiced in Nashville, Tennessee. Kelley's mother, Diane Sanders, raised Kelley to be a debutante. And it is totally true that Kelley was beautiful. From the time she was born, all her family members agreed Kelley was so very pretty and so very perfect and so very deadly. This is the story of Kelley Cannon. Kelley, coming from a wealthy background, was able to attend the best schools. She attended Harpeth Hall School, a private independent college prep all-girls school located in Nashville. As of 2020, the yearly tuition rate at Harpeth Hall was around $32,000. Other famous students who attended Harpeth Hall were Reese Witherspoon and singer Amy Grant. 99% of students who graduate from Harpeth Hall go on to attend a four-year university. Southern young ladies who attend Harpeth Hall are generally considered to be trained in the refined ways of a Southern lady. And Kelley was a star student herself, being a cheerleader, and she was the prom queen. Kelley had many options open to her after graduation from the college prep school. She considered medical school, following in the footsteps of her doctor father, but ultimately that was not the path for her. Her new path? Marry a lawyer. James Malcolm Cannon, otherwise known as Jim, didn't have as charmed of a life as Kelley did growing up. Jim's parents divorced when he was a young boy, and he ended up attending boarding schools. But he definitely landed on his feet. He graduated from Samford University Law School in Birmingham, Alabama, and he got his start working at a law firm in Nashville. After law school and getting his first job, Jim was on his way to getting the life that he always wanted. He had had a couple of missteps along the way, however, and before he and Kelley had met, he had had a few business failures and he was dealing with a bankruptcy. But Jim Cannon was a good-looking young lawyer practicing in Nashville, and Kelley snatched him right up. Soon after they met, they were out and about on the town, and they were making waves as the hottest young couple around. Friends of Jim said that Jim was a great guy. They said he really liked people and he could talk to anyone. One friend said that when Jim and Kelley started dating, he introduced her to his friends and they accepted her right away. Jim was witty, extremely funny with a particularly dry sense of humor. Kelley said that she not only thought of him as her boyfriend, but a very good friend as well. Of course, Kelley's parents had high expectations for any guy who dated their Southern girl debutante, Kelley. And their expectations of Jim Cannon were no different. Kelley was her parents' only daughter, and they wanted the best for her, to be fair. In fact, when Kelley's mother met Jim, she thought Kelley was too good for him. But what her mother thought didn't stop Kelley from accepting Jim's proposal of marriage, and they were married. Kelley got the large Southern wedding she had always wanted from her time as a debutante. And from their wedding pictures, in which Kelley stunned as a glowing bride, from the outside they appeared happy and in love. After the wedding, Jim decided to put his law practice to the side and start a new venture. In 1999, he co-founded a healthcare debt collection business called Medical Reimbursements of America. It was a very successful company, and quickly it made Jim Cannon a multimillionaire, which made Kelley Cannon a multimillionaire's wife. And the young couple enjoyed the good life that business brought them. They bought a large home in a wealthy neighborhood of Nashville called Green Hills. They had expensive cars, went on vacations, and enjoyed the status of a privileged life. And as if life wasn't perfect enough, Jim and Kelley welcomed 3 beautiful children. 2 boys came first, and then finally a baby girl who Kelley just doted on. As her mother would note later, Kelley was over the moon to be able to raise her own southern little princess. Certainly, from the outside, it seemed as if Kelley was living the same charmed life that she had always enjoyed from her own childhood. Great wealth, stability in her marriage, and a beautiful family. But not everything is as it seems. According to Kelley, she suffered a lower back injury and she was consequently prescribed pain medication. Soon enough, she was addicted to the pain meds, and Kelley's addiction became a tremendous strain on her perfect life and her perfect marriage. Kelley ended up in rehab for her drug addiction, not just once, but multiple times. The nanny who took care of Kelley and Jim's children stated that Kelley always had pills within easy reach, and it wasn't just pills. When she had to, Kelley would drink cough syrup continuously throughout the day as well. Along with her health spiraling downward and downward due to her narcotics addiction, so was Kelley's perfect marriage. It was spiraling out of control as well. First, the couple tried therapy and counseling. Jim was trying his best to help Kelley. He loved his wife and he wanted her to get better, but it wasn't working. Within a span of 3 years, the police were called to the beautiful home in that wealthy neighborhood where the family lived a total of 12 times. Jim Cannon filed a restraining order against his wife, stating that Kelley was out of control and a menace to her own family. Kelley was forced to move out of the family home and into a condo located about 5 minutes away. Jim and Kelley Cannon were not the hottest young couple in Nashville, Tennessee anymore, far from it. At one of their lowest points, and during the period when Kelley was under a restraining order, Jim Cannon called 911 to report that his wife Kelley was acting erratically and that she had put her young baby daughter in the car and had driven away while she was under the influence of drugs. Police gave chase and followed Kelley in her car, traveling at high speeds until she had finally given up and she was captured by the cops. She was arrested and put in jail for evading arrest and for violating her restraining order. Kelley probably thought that she was at her rock bottom, but as time would tell, there are rock bottoms even lower still. Jim Cannon had had enough. He couldn't risk his children being endangered by their mother again. She was simply out of control, and he could not see a way forward for their marriage. He called his lawyer friend and started the process of divorce. The divorce papers were filed on February 29, 2008. He wrote to his friend in an email, "Stick a fork in me, I'm done." And Jim knew that he would have to request sole custody of the children for their safety. He didn't like taking them away from Kelley, but he knew it needed to be done. He also knew that Kelley would strongly oppose his request for custody. He loved Kelley, but she wasn't the same person anymore, at least not while she was still under the influence of addiction. And Jim had decided that he would no longer pay for Kelley's drug treatment. And Kelley was then locked out of the house. Of course, according to statements Kelley made much later, she didn't think that Jim was an appropriate parent himself. She alleged that Jim had had a heavy drinking problem for years before their separation. But back to the pending divorce, Kelley was just completely shocked that he would ask for one. She was shocked and she was angry. She told her friends, "How dare he think he can divorce me? He can't do that." 3 months later, in May, Kelley was accused of ramming her car straight into Jim's car and trying to take their children away from the home. According to an affidavit, Kelley smelled of alcohol, she ripped Jim's shirt, and she beat him up, causing bruises. Kelley was set to go to court for that assault charge on July 1st. But before that court date came, Jim Cannon would be found dead. He would be found dead at age 44 years old. A housekeeper who worked at the large house belonging to the Cannon family made the phone call to 911 on the morning of June 23, 2008. After arriving at the house for work that morning and finding an open back door, the housekeeper had looked for Jim Cannon throughout the house, eventually finding his body. He was dead.
He's dead.
All right, well, why do you think he's dead?
Something's happened. There's
He's cold and stiff.
I hadn't touched him. He's definitely stiff. He's white, except for he has markings all over him. He has red markings all over him. He's white, except that he has... Oh, God.
All right. Can I give you instructions on how to do CPR until the person gets there?
No, there's no CPR. He's dead.
Later, she described his skin as being discolored, and that the palm of his hand was discolored like the color of charcoal. But where Jim was found was an odd location. The housekeeper had entered the bedroom where Jim Cannon had often slept since his separation. Jim had usually slept in the bottom bunk of the bunk beds in his boys' bedroom. The boys themselves had been sleeping in the master bedroom. In the bunk bedroom, the housekeeper noticed that a dresser had been moved in front of a closed closet door. And that was an odd thing. The dresser had never been moved in front of the closet before. And it did look to her like Jim had slept there the evening before, in the bottom bunk. Though the bed was now empty, the sheets had been tossed aside, and Jim's briefcase and Pellegrino water bottles were on the floor next to the bottom bunk. The housekeeper had a bad feeling about what she might find when she opened that closet door, and she was right. When she moved the dresser out of the way and opened the door, she found Jim, naked and not breathing. Pale white, but full of red marks as well, it looked to her as if he might have been beaten. And he was laying on his right side, seemingly tossed into the closet, on the closet floor.
He's dead, and he's been in that closet since I got here at 8:30 this morning. And someone closed the door on him and pushed the dresser into the closet.
Is he conscious?
Is he conscious? No. No. He opened the closet door and found him. He's beaten. He's been beaten, and he's dead.
The housekeeper and the children's nanny were both too scared to go near Jim's body, although they did lay a blanket over him. Although I will note here that is not something you should do when you come upon a crime scene and a body. Don't put anything on top of the body.
I'm scared to go near him. He's naked. We put a blanket over him.
And for the housekeeper and the nanny, the scarier thing about the whole situation was that the children were also gone. They were missing. They weren't in the house. And as the housekeeper frantically reported to the police in the 911 call, she had no idea where they were. Jim was dead in the closet, both of his cars were still at the house, and all 3 of his kids were missing. And the housekeeper gave her opinion right away about where she thought the kids could be. She thought they had been taken by the dead man's wife, Kelley Cannon.
The kids are gone. All of the kids are gone. Both of his cars are here. He's had major problems out of his wife. I even have a paper that's got a restraining order where she's not to come around. I think that she has came, and that's what's happened. Somebody needs to find those kids.
The next call the housekeeper made was to Kelley Cannon's mother. She told her that Jim was dead and that she needed to come to her daughter's house right away. Kelley's mom was shocked. She had just talked to Jim the night before, and Jim had even invited her to dinner that same day. But Kelley's mom had declined, and now her son-in-law was dead. The investigation into what had happened to Jim was begun, and it began with an examination of the crime scene. Police noted that there seemed to be no forced entry into the Cannon house. The police did note, however, an open window on the lower level of the home and a chair directly underneath that window on the interior. Perhaps an intruder had gained entry into the home through the window. And upstairs, there was definite indication of foul play. Nearby to where Jim was found, there were items strewn about the floor. And Jim's body was a crime scene just by itself. He had bruises and abrasions on the right side of his face, and he had abrasions under his right eye. And below his chin, there were grooves, deep red grooves all the way around his neck. And the police noted that Jim had a little bit of dried blood coming both out of his nose and out of his mouth. All of these initial findings on Jim's body pointed to a probable strangulation. But with what had he been strangled? To the investigators, they postulated that he had been killed with an item the killer had found close by, something in the bedroom, something that was handy and already at the scene. The investigators thought he had been strangled with a phone charger cord. They thought that because they had found the base of the charging cord on the bedroom floor, a ragged end where the cord itself looked like it had been ripped away. Further investigation would find that Jim's blood was on the charging cord base itself. Investigators would go a step further and note that the marks on Jim's head seemed to match marks that would have been made by the metal prongs from the charger pressed to his face. And the next item of interest found by the police was the most important one. The very tip of the finger of a latex glove was found lying on the bedroom floor. And lying next to the feet of the victim himself was another discarded latex glove. Investigators noticed something else in the closet right away. It was the strong smell of bleach. And as they looked around, they found a discarded empty Clorox bottle, a bottle of bleach, on the floor of the closet. Later examination of Jim's body would find that he had had bleach poured all over him. Somebody was trying to cover up evidence. Somebody was trying to erase their tracks. So the police had a latex glove, an empty bottle of bleach, and Jim's body itself, but where was Jim's children? Knowing already that Jim and his wife were having marriage difficulties, they knew that going to check with Kelley was the very first thing to do, and so the police rushed to her condo. And when the police loudly knocked on the door to Kelley's condo, their questions were quickly answered. There Kelley was, calmly holding her baby daughter, and her 2 sons were watching TV in the living room. Police knew the conversation they next needed to have with Kelley was going to be tricky. They needed to get Kelley to tell them how the children had arrived at her condo, without directly laying out the fact that they knew Jim was dead. They wanted to see what Kelley's explanation would be first, before they laid out that detail. The police asked Kelley when was the last time she had talked with Jim on the phone.
When's the last time you talked to him on the phone?
Last night.
Kelley went on to report that she had been out the previous night and that Jim had called her on her cell phone. Kelley's friend later did confirm that Kelley had received a call and that the caller did appear to be Jim, based on how Kelley argued with the caller. Kelley was telling the caller that they couldn't have the kids and that they were hers. The caller, her friend surmised, had to be Jim, of course. And her friend knew that Kelley was very, very angry with her husband. But Kelley had a different version of the events of that phone call. To the police, she stated that Jim had been in distress and that he had told Kelley that he wanted to see her, despite the restraining order. According to Kelley, Jim wanted Kelley to come to the house.
All I know is that he sounded crazy.
So she stated to the police that's what she did. In the middle of the night, because she was concerned about Jim. She told police that she had a 6th sense that something was very wrong. Kelley stated that she drove into the driveway, parked, and saw that the back door was open. She told police that she went inside, calling for Jim, but that he didn't answer. She said that she had then walked upstairs, heard her baby daughter crying, so she gathered up the baby girl and gathered her 2 sons, and she left right away with the 3 children.
I freaked out. I freaked out. I mean, I didn't know what to think.
Of course, the first question posed to Kelley was, why didn't you call the police? Kelley's answer? She didn't want to get Jim in trouble, she said. She didn't know what he was involved in. Her line of reasoning, she had thought that maybe he had had a drunk friend over at the house that night, that maybe Jim had left the house, maybe there was another reason, etc., etc. She tells police that she was just going to wait to hear from Jim the following day. She didn't think that there was a need to call the police. She was going to wait to call Jim herself and ask him what had happened. But why did they want to know all this? Kelley finally asked the police. As far as she knew, Jim was just missing from the house. Was something else wrong? She asked. Was Jim dead? She asked them.
You have the children. The last person maybe to talk to him.
He was found dead.
Yes, ma'am.
How did he die? He was laying there dead by himself.
The investigators didn't find Kelley's story and Kelley's questions to be truthful. And at the same time they were talking with Kelley, they were also looking over what they could see inside her condo. And what one officer noticed was particularly interesting. Inside a grocery bag on the living room floor was a box of latex gloves. Not put away in a cabinet or a closet, just lying there in the bag, like they had been recently purchased. Had Kelley recently purchased that box of gloves, they wondered? Had she purchased them the same night Jim was killed? So they went to visit 2 local drugstores and asked to review their security footage. And yes, Kelley Cannon was seen on footage from a local Walgreens pharmacy. Footage from that very same evening Jim died. Recorded at around 11 p.m. that night, June 22nd, there was Kelley on the screen, walking up and down the aisle and looking at a display of gloves, making a selection and promptly walking past the cash registers and walking out of the store, never stopping to pay for them. When Kelley is questioned as to why she would steal the box of gloves, she has no good answer. In fact, she disputes that she had even done that. She states that she must have bought them and used cash. But when asked to provide a receipt of the purchase, she is unable to do so. Eventually, she is forced to admit that, yes, perhaps she had shoplifted the gloves. And yes, she says, the timing of her acquisition of the gloves and Jim's death is unfortunate. Kelley states, yes, it was very ill-timed, and yes, it was very convenient, however, for it to be stated that she had shoplifted. Oddly, however, at different times, Kelley would dispute that she was even in the store at all. In a recorded jailhouse phone call, Kelley told a friend that the woman in the drugstore video was not even her at all. She told the friend that instead, it was a video of a woman who was having an affair with Jim.
That girl that he had the affair with.
That's who they got on the tape?
Yeah.
She's probably the one that did it.
That friend was brought to the stand later in Kelley's trial, providing evidence from the prosecutor's view that Kelley Cannon is a liar and what she says can't be trusted. Nonetheless, finding the footage of Kelley stealing the box of latex gloves and then finding that box of gloves right there out in the open at her condo, it was a big piece of evidence. Especially due to the discovery of that latex tip of the finger found at the crime scene. A glove tip which, after forensic investigation, was found to have Kelley's DNA on the interior and Jim's blood, his DNA, on the exterior. Investigators were definitely now squarely looking at Kelley Cannon as the prime suspect in the murder of her estranged husband, Jim. Kelley was subsequently arrested without incident at her mother's home in West Nashville. Kelley was charged with first-degree murder, but she was able to go free on bond for several months. However, a judge ordered her jailed the following year in 2009 in late March. Kelley had violated the terms of her release by removing an electronic tracking device that she wore as a condition of her bond. In the meantime, while the prosecution was preparing for a criminal trial, there was a lot of back and forth about Kelley's access to her late husband's money, their house, and their personal belongings. Kelley was also very worried about who was going to keep her dog, a Bichon named Sugar. Around that time as well, another company bought Jim Cannon's stake in the medical debt collection company that he had co-founded, which also complicated the money matters. Without an eyewitness and without a confession, the evidence in Kelley's trial would be circumstantial, but it was shaping up to be a very strong circumstantial case. In fact, even Kelley's mother was suspicious of Kelley's involvement in the murder. According to a police detective, during a conversation held right after the discovery of Jim's body, when she was asked who she thought could have killed Jim, Kelley's mom responded that her daughter may have done it. Later, however, in court, Kelley's mother denied ever making that statement. But first, the investigators had to explain this fact. How could Kelley, a 90-some-pound woman who was 5 feet tall and who was fresh from rehab with not much muscle mass, how could this slight woman strangle her husband? Was she physically capable of committing the murder? Later, during her trial, the fact that Kelley was a small, thin woman would be the answer to almost everything the prosecution laid out as evidence. Kelley was just a small, little itty-bitty thing, they said. Surely she couldn't have killed her husband, they said, over and over. It was a question both the defense and the prosecution had to answer. Would Kelley have been able to quickly wrap a cord around her husband's neck and use leverage to strangle him to death? Or was it because Jim had been struck over the head and had become woozy or unconscious and he wasn't able to put up much of a fight before he was strangled? Had he had several drinks? Or, Kelley Cannon wondered later, had Jim, her husband, been involved in rough sex with random strangers? And had there been an accident during some sort of sexual experience happen that evening between Jim and someone unknown? Had Jim, Kelley wondered aloud, been involved with hooking up with random strangers who also happened to be male? These were all accusations that never came up in the criminal trial because Kelley never took the stand, and these were things she simply said afterwards, in the attempt maybe to just smear her husband's name. These are the thoughts that she chose to share with the media, with TV reporters. Other reasons, other possibilities why Jim had wound up dead, because after all, she had not done it, she said. However much she argued that what she spoke was the truth, no other person had stepped forward to confirm and agree with those rumors and claims. Only Kelley had had those theories. Further, friends of Jim pointed out, if that was the case, and if Jim was known to have been having rough sex with strangers, and if he was an alcoholic also addicted to drugs, those facts would have come to the surface during the restraining order process or during the legal proceedings of their divorce. And going even further than that, a forensic autopsy of Jim's body did not find that he had had sex the night he was killed. Leading up to the trial, however, Kelley told the detectives that Jim wasn't stable and that he had been both a heavy drinker and that he had beaten her. She also reported that he had used drugs as well.
My understanding is that he was a fairly stable individual.
No, he wasn't stable. I mean, he was a bad drinker.
Has he ever beat you?
Yeah.
He has? You ever filed a police report?
No.
How come?
Because I'm scared of him.
Nevertheless, Kelley reported that no, she never could have strangled her husband. She just physically could not have done it. But the investigator alleged that she could have. Jim Cannon himself was not a large man, measuring 5 foot 6 inches and weighing only around 160 pounds. And if he had been drinking that night, and if he had been caught by surprise, it was completely possible, they thought. When the trial of Kelley Cannon began in 2010, her biggest supporter was her mom. Her mother, Diane Sanders, stood by her side, defending her daughter all the way through. Kelley's family was also able to hire a forensic pathologist. That pathologist testified and shed doubt on the fact that Kelley, being of small stature, would have had enough strength to physically strangle her husband. And the defense pointed to evidence that didn't quite fit the prosecutor and the police's theories about what happened. Her defense lawyer asked, why were 2 other latex gloves found discarded in the backyard of the home? Were they tossed away in an escape by the real killer? The prosecutor refuted that theory, stating that the gloves being tossed into the bushes could have been staged by Kelley herself. They also pointed to the fact that those tossed gloves had no DNA found on them and that they appeared to have not been worn at all. At trial, the prosecutor brought the medical examiner to the stand to testify as to the method of Jim's death and how it was possible for someone of Kelley's size to kill him. He stated that the phone charger cord made sense to him as the ligature by which he was strangled, saying that it matched the injuries on Jim's neck. And he said that all it might take for a person to strangle someone larger than themselves is to wrap the cord around their neck and hold it for about 10 seconds before the person is unconscious. Hold it for 2 to 3 minutes longer, and the person would be dead. A devastating part of the trial came when Jim and Kelley's oldest son came to the stand to testify. He testified as to what he remembered the night that his mom came to pick up him, his brother, and their baby sister. He stated that his mom had come into the master bedroom where he and his brother had been sleeping, and she told them both that they had to leave with her right away. Nobody else had woken them up that evening. No stranger. No one else. Just their mom was there, he said. He said that his mom had told them that they had to leave right away, and when he had asked his mother if he could get a pillow from his bedroom, she had told him no. He had wanted to get a pillow from his own bedroom, the bedroom with the bunk beds, the bedroom where his father had been sleeping on the bottom bunk, the bedroom where Jim had been found the next day, his body cold and dead, in the closet of that room. Also, the boy stated that it was odd to him that his mother had led them all out of the house via the front stairs, not the more convenient back stairs that were close to his bedroom with the bunk beds. He estimated that they had left sometime between 1 and 2 a.m. Kelley's son also stated that his mom had seemed, quote, nervous and jumpy, and it was reported that as the younger brother had called out for his dad as they were leaving the house, there had been no answer. After their father was murdered and their mother was charged in the murder of their father, the 3 children had went to live with Jim's sister. And if all of that testimony and circumstantial evidence was not damning enough, a couple of other pieces of evidence came to light during the trial. One, the jeans that Kelley was wearing the night Jim died had a small bleach stain on them. If you recall earlier, the police had found an open and empty bottle of bleach in the closet with Jim's body. And of course it was known that Jim's body had been doused in bleach as well. And then one more witness took the stand in the trial with a surprising story. He was a bartender who had waited on Kelley about a month prior to her husband's murder. He was a bartender who liked to talk with people, and he remembered faces. And when he saw Kelley's face in the news after her husband's murder, he realized that he remembered that woman. He remembered that she was a customer at the bar who had left a lasting impression upon him. He said that Kelley had come into the bar, sat down, and during their discussion she had begun to complain about her husband. She had said that she was so mad that she could have killed him. Going further, she had stated that if her husband had tried to take away her babies, that she would kill him. So that bartender had called the police, and he reported to them what he had heard out of Kelley's mouth about 5 weeks prior to her husband being found dead. And then the trial of Kelley Cannon came to an end. The jury was sent out to deliberate, and within only 1 hour, they had reached a verdict. Kelley Cannon was found guilty of first-degree premeditated murder. And it was the quickest deliberation most everybody in the courtroom had ever witnessed. Kelley Cannon was sentenced to life in prison. On direct appeal in 2012, the appeals court affirmed the conviction and sentence. In 2012, Kelley tried to get access to a portion of the estate of her millionaire husband. Under a Tennessee state law known as the, quote, Slayer statute, unquote, Kelley cannot inherit the estate. The Slayer statute prohibits murderers from profiting from the estate of their victims. However, it was reported that, with an appeal of her conviction still a possibility, the Tennessee Court of Appeals agreed that she deserved a hearing. Kelley claimed that Jim's sister, who was raising the couple's 3 children at the time, was squandering the trust fund set up for them. In 2015, Kelley was back in front of a judge for a post-conviction petition. Her new attorneys were there to argue that Kelley deserved a new trial. They argued that her former trial attorney was ineffective because he had not questioned why some things were not done in the autopsy. Kelley's new attorney believed it could be grounds for a new trial. The new defense attorneys also had a different version about why a tip of latex was found at the scene, which they felt possibly led to a different murderer. They also claimed that search warrants issued at the time of the murder were wrong, and that items in the house were moved. And during that appearance in court in 2015, Kelley again did not take the stand. She still proclaims and insists that she is innocent. However, the judge did not agree with the new lawyer's presentation, and Kelley Cannon was not granted a new trial. And that decision went on to another appeals court. And in 2017, the appeals court upheld the decision. Kelley would not get a new trial. And so Kelley Cannon sits in prison. She is now 55 years old. On her Meet an Inmate profile, she describes herself as interesting, intelligent, and well-rounded. She states that she enjoys wood carving, painting, drawing, and watercolor art. She lists her occupation before prison as a writer and a housewife. Really, she listed her occupation as a housewife. The irony is surreal. Jim Cannon died at only 44 years old. A funny guy to his friends, a great colleague, and a wonderful, loving father to his 3 children. May he rest in peace. Thank you for your time in watching this video. I know that your time is valuable, and I appreciate that you chose to spend some of it watching this video with me. If you wouldn't mind, leave a like, and if you wouldn't mind, leave me a comment. I would love to know what you thought about this story and this horrible woman. And are you subscribed? Please do so if you wouldn't mind. But until next time, everyone, you know that it's rough out there, and I'm thinking of you, and I wish you well. And I'll see you next time, okay? Take care. Bye-bye. See ya.